So next up, we've got Wallace McDonald from Petersburg, Alaska. Are you here, Wallace?
Sorry about the setup time here, folks. I'm not real steady anymore. Wallace McDonald, this is biographical information I'm supposed to give to the man there. Made his living fishing out of Petersburg when he was young. For the past 30 years, he's made his living building refrigeration system for commercial boats. And I'm not really prolific as a writer. This is just something I've tried out here. And I came a couple of years ago and read something about crab fishing. It was kind of, long and tedious, but that's what crab fishing is a lot of the time. So I guess it was accurate. But I decided I was going to write something this time, and I emailed John and said, I'd like to come down. And then I got the schedule, and he had me on 2 nights, and I had everything written for 1 night, and I had to come up with something else, and it was January, and so I sat down and I figured, well, I've got a month, I can do something. So I worked and wrote and rewrote, and my wife, Larissa Alexeyevna, gave me lots of space. She kept waiting for me to read the thing to her, and I got down to, last Wednesday, I finally got it done. I said, that's it, I've had enough, and I read it back, and I thought, this is kind of long and tedious and dark, but it's January in Petersburg. I mean, what do you expect? So what I did is I decided I'm not going to read that. I pulled out that manuscript from a couple of years ago, and I took out a lot of the parts and everything. So instead of the long, boring, tedious crab trip, it's going to be crab trip highlights, the highlights reel. And this is windfall. If you're from my neck of the woods, you know what windfall means. But I'll just get rolling here. Each day when we start out, we're a mote of floodlights in the dark. The anchor comes up, shedding wedges of mud. Shanks break over roller, chalk and dog it head aft to swallow coffee and briefly savor the feel of warm, dry gloves. The first buoy appears in our halo, and Phil throttles down, maneuvers her course, retrieve, and we begin. The vessel is a Decorah. It was built in 1911, schooner. This is back in the 80s. Phil Clausen and his son, Steve, I worked with them. Drum of engine and hydraulics moan. As the line drools from the shiv, we move from pot to pot. The rhythm kicks in as sky lightens, then reddens in the south, and the rising sun's glare reveals a line of buoys receding on the reflecting sea, leading out the inlet towards a black line marking the horizon. We slice through the mirror surface of the sea, retrieving and coiling and setting and sorting, while around us the smooth surface is streaked with tide. Now a skirling breeze comes riffling across, a first moist kiss, a breath that first caresses not quite warm, that begins to puff up, a rippling chop as the black smudge of horizon thickens, red disk of sun rising barely ahead of the advancing front. Our mood is light as pots come up with good numbers when we first feel the swells as wind and rain comes down on us, borne by the southeaster. Spray rakes the deck, massive dark clouds blots out the sun's glow as tide turns and begins to run against the sea. We plunge into swells, getting closer to the end of the string. The number of keepers is falling, so we begin to stack nesting pots on the swaying deck, slip tie coils of line, regiment and rank them with their buoys, so the last pot swings aboard and we hang on as Phil times the swells, guns the engine and brings her about. The stern yaws and settles, and we run before it till we're back where the numbers were best. And Phil calls down, and we set a pot, then hook into the next to vang onto the launcher, slam it down and hook the next, set and lift and vang and set, timing the motions with the rock and sway of the deck up into the inlet. The sky dims and it's all under floodlights now, and here the buoy line comes up slack till the pot pulls free. It had wound up in the shallows, up in the bank. It's full of dungeons. We're fishing for paradise. We look up for the word to Phil, he calls down, "Stack the pot, but save some of those dungeons for dinner." A knowing smile around us. Yeah, he planned that. So between the strings, the biggest cook pot goes on the stove, boiling water, bushering the crab, and the anchor goes over the bow and settles into the mud. And then at the galley table, Steve and I grab sections of crab, cracking and shelling and scarfing it down, but not Phil. He takes a seat in his accustomed place. He patiently picks and gleans and meticulously assembles a mound of crab meat, which he then devours with gusto. And leaning back content, he asks, "I wonder what the King of Norway is having for dinner tonight." The chart curls open, showing the bay a splotch of pale blue ink spilling across the paper, all stippled and spotted with constellations of asterisks, marking rock piles submerged between yellow pincers of headlands. Phil plots our way through the cabbage patch, lining up a spike of rock and a peak beyond to thread the channel on up into the gully hidden there, behind the Rainbow's Inn. For sure, these pots will come up full. And either we're loaded or run out of bait, and when another northerly approaches, clears the sky, we tie down the booms and batten the hatch cover and begin the run to town with the sea on our stern. In the galley hung beneath the cabinet over the sink, ivory coffee mugs all facing inboard sway in their hooks. I take two and fill them from the warm pot, secured in a corner of the stove, and set them at the top of the wheelhouse ladder. Climbing up, I see through the dark windows we're running with the chop. Gusts of spray reflected by the floods, Phil's face underlit by pulsing raster glow, orange coal of cigarette burning. He's all creases and stubble, with the mic at his lips broadcasting in double whiskey baritone to whoever is listening, call and response, conditions, outlook, forecast, sundry news from town, call and response. He takes the mug from Mike's extended hand and takes up the story he'd been telling, glowing coal, streaking light as he gestures and punctuates a tale I've likely heard before, but why should I mind that the numbers of the catch seem to grow with each telling? With wax and wane and flow and ebb, swinging with the tide and wind, night by night and dream by dream, then begin another day. Again the anchor comes aboard, then in the light the first buoy shows, and hand over hand the hours ordered by tide book columns that cycle through of pot to pot, from season to season, generation before, and now to generation next. Compass and course, wheel and vector, from life to life, coil by coil, till the anchor drops, the flukes wedge in, and we drift beneath the coiling stars, tethered here to the surface of time, beyond the margin of the past, on the cusp of a future unfurling. And that's all in memory of that's all in memory of Phil and Steve, who both passed away. Steve's son Mike is still fishing. Sorry, I can't remember the name of his boat. I got time still? Okay, I've got something else here. It's just some flow of consciousness thing. It's a brief history of a moment. Clouds parting reveal dawn, mantled peak glowing, snow fringe, drips reflected suns drop, glimmer, splash, plop, soaks, sopping earth sodden, percolates, weeps, dribbles, oozes, jewels, through roots exude, pool, brim, trickle, linger, daughter, dawdle, puddle, pond, immerses, spirit, murmurs, tremulous runnels twining, expand, soothe, over pebbles, sluice, rivulet, brook, gambol, sliding stones, laugh, slip, tumble, off mossy ledges, traipse, drape, rills, brage, merge, plate, meld, rising, mutter, grumble, mumble, yearn, gurgle, flume, sing, gush, freshet, gathering, fans of cricks, pulse, chatter, babble, speak in tongues, ravel, snarl, reeve round cobble, stutter, stretch, stammer, flowing, frenzy, torrent, boil, building, cusp, spill over palisade through crenellations, hurdle, tumble, cascade, pierce, prismed, Mist-breathed wraiths spray, glistening thrust, groove, gnaw, hew, cleave the rock, splinter, fissure, wear through clefts, split the stone, shatter, carve, seeth jagged fragments, jutting out, rapids, shout, reverberate, echo, spew, foam, froth, ramble, furrow, deep gouge out mountain, scour down crumbling bastion, screw, boulders, rolled, careening, sprawl, spread, excavate, gravel, sculpt basins overflowing, corrugated riffles, spill, rippling sky, shards breaking, sunlight dappling, raindrops stipple, florist, reflection, rustling, rain swollen, turgid, surging fins, ruffle, flash, glint, submerged, snaggled, spawning, shapes swim, twist, writhe, lurk, mystic gravid pools, distended, flow, swells, joins, swim, blends, extends, mingles, rise, broaden, flood valley cresting, flotsam history carried, spinning, overflows, banks, infiltrates, marches, covers, fields, embrace, inundate, nurture, suckle, renew, succor, replenish, rejoin, force, gesturing forth, sweeping arc, bends, reaching, split by islands, sliding, cross bars, circling, swivel, slips past outcrops, eddies, spiral, swirl, against flow, whirl, convolute, unclasp, recede, relinquish, surrender, release, return, sonorous, ripples, glinting, susurrate, whispers, sighing, shimmering, swirls, curl, submerge, current, having run its course, reunites now with the source, dissolves within ebb and flow, lets eternal spirit go. Cycle then spins around again. River ends where it begins. Sun disk seen through rising mist, glimmer of the sea. Thank you.